In the mid-1970s, teenage injuries from playing sports took me out of any hope to play at the collegiate level, so I took up dancing, mainly to meet women and stay in good physical condition. I moved to Ocala, Florida in 1977 from New York City, and I was quite the accomplished disco dancer, which was big at that time. I had lots of female dance partners. Some were girlfriends, and some just wanted to dance when we met up at the club. It was not a matter of whether or not I liked disco, but it was a great way to meet a lot of emotionally starved women. We always had a great time on Friday and Saturday nights at the club. It was late 1977 in a Central Florida community college class where I met, let's call her Karen. We were both 19 years old. She was very pretty and had a great smile and figure, etc., and we hit it off. I asked her out, and we had such a good time that we continued. Our dates were not only going to dinner, which I paid for while also working 2 jobs in addition to paying for my own tuition and car, but also went for long walks, long conversations in my car, Disney World, bowling, etc. We were hitting our relationship out of the ballpark. Well, after about 5 months, things began to get pretty serious between us. Our conversations were about the future, including sex, kids, a home, education, careers, etc. The kinds of things people talk about when their relationship turns to longer-term projections. We seemed to be very compatible, and she treated me like a prince during this time. She agreed with a lot of the ideas I had, and she followed up with ideas of her own that sounded good to me too. I lived with my parents, who were retired with serious medical problems. They never charged me rent, and I helped them around the house and financially when I had built up some savings. At that time, Karen's parents treated me well. I found out later they were just tolerating another one of Karen's boyfriends. They invited me to dinner, church, and to play cards once in a while. We had a few laughs, and they seemed to be a good family. Her little sister, let's call her Debbie, turned out to be the best out of all of them, and only 15 years old at the time. I recall several times when Debbie hinted, warnings, to watch out for her older sister Karen. I took it as a young, jealous rivalry. Wow, was I later proved wrong. After a year together, I went on to the University of Florida and commuted from home. I took on 2 jobs to help with the extra cost of commuting, maintaining my old used car, as well as the increase in tuition, books, etc. I also took on student loans because the university costs were much higher than that of a community college. Karen completed her 2-year degree and began full-time work in a low-level position. We saw each other every weekend after work and completing my school homework and on my days off. As we grew closer, her parents became more concerned with our relationship. That was a red flag, but to a nearsighted man I couldn't see this crap. Finally, one day, about 18 months into our dating only each other, I proposed to her and presented her with an engagement ring. It was a 1/4-carat diamond ring, and it was all I could afford at the time. That ring was pretty expensive since I was working part-time minimum wage jobs and earning $1.60 per hour before taxes. She didn't like the size of the ring, but accepted my marriage proposal. I should have seen that as a red flag, but this young fool didn't. Love is not blind. People just need to open their eyes and focus or get a thick pair of glasses. But I promised her more after we were married, and when I started earning money from my career. When her parents were told about our engagement, they were very upset. Another red flag I overlooked and hoped they would eventually come around. Yeah, right. How damn naive I was. One day her father told me he didn't like my Greek ethnicity. His background was Dutch. When I asked why, he told me Greeks were too close. I couldn't believe my ears when he said that. I got hot and angry, but it was a controlled anger. I was raised right, and situations like this were certainly no need to escalate into physical violence. I was raised to argue rationally and not fly off the handle. When I asked her father, "Isn't that what you want for your daughter?" he emphatically told me no. That blew me away, and thinking that he was joking, my laughter enraged him. I used laughter to keep myself calm. I could have easily beaten the shit out of this little boy with a man's head, but that would have put me in jail. Her dad then disclosed how he had problems with his siblings, and I told him that was his problem. We argued, and I carefully chose my words, telling him families are not perfect, but I have a close family, and Karen seemed to be fine with that. He didn't like the conversation, so he immediately dismissed me and walked away with his tail between his legs. I was getting very concerned. After that, he wasn't speaking to me except for superficial greetings. He was such a wussy that he let his wife do the talking after that. Being around her dad made me so thankful for having a real man for my father, who showed me and taught me how to be a real man, husband and father. This is where it gets very interesting. Her mom, let's call her Mother or Diablo, because I truly believe she was the devil's daughter. She was a very controlling, attention-seeking, manipulative wench who nagged her husband to death. She was healthier than a horse, but always laid down and wailed out loud about how God was punishing her and keeping her sick because she was one of his favorites. What a farce. Bad actress. I saw right through this and tried to expose how her mother was using this act to control her, but Karen ate it up and tried to comfort Diablo every time she wailed in fake pain. Debbie saw the bullshit and secretly came to me several times and laughed as she mocked and acted out her mom's drama queen act. After the engagement, I also saw a notable change in Karen towards me. Her mother would have talks with her after Karen and I met and had one of our many discussions of life's issues. Diablo listened to her, and then by twisting the meaning of our conversation, she convinced Karen and made it look like I was some sort of pervert or controlling man. Karen would then later come to me with this shit. Remember our conversation the other day about whatever the topic was we discussed? Then she would say, well, Mother said. And she would proceed to tell me what Diablo's commandment was. After 3 Mother saids, I had enough and decided to arrange a come to Jesus meeting with Diablo. The following were just a few of the topics that Diablo put her 2 cents in and brainwashed Karen with. Number 1. Don't have blank sex. That's what animals do. What damn nerve. Diablo just got into our bedroom privacy. I'm not a perv or twisted sexual guy. I'm a very normal man with a high drive and believe my woman and I decide what's best for us. Number 2. Karen's money belongs to her. I am supposed to provide everything, but whatever Karen earns stays in her personal account. Finally, do not have any children. Raising them in this demonic atmosphere is unhealthy. I had it. The gloves came off. Karen told me to be nice to Diablo. I said, I will be as nice as I can to a wretched person who is trying to rule my married life. I countered Diablo's stupid BS and explained to Karen what my parents' advice was on marriage. Whatever goes on in your bedroom is between you and your wife. No one else. Marital problems are settled between you and your wife. No third party should ever be involved. Everything you have belongs to both of you. When you're married, you're one entity. When I met with Diablo, we sat down at her kitchen table to discuss the issues. Starting with, what kind of sex? I told her to stay out of my bedroom, but if she wanted me to, I could visit her and her husband and give them some advice to spice up their relationship, since her hubby looked so unsatisfied. I also added that her youngest daughter was home alone one day when I arrived early to pick up Karen. Debbie, who was 16 years old at that time, asked me if I wanted to see what she found in her parents' bedroom. I said okay. To my surprise, she came out with an adult video with a very explicit cover. When I told Diablo about it and how extremely kinky that was compared to my bedroom practices, she sat there speechless and stuttered. Then she blamed her lame husband, to which I called bullshit. To the next conversation. Karen's money belongs to her, and I am supposed to be the 100% provider. My response to that was, so her money is hers, and my money is ours. That's a bunch of crap. What kind of marriage is that? When I told her that I intend to have a prenup that calls for everything in the marriage belongs to me upon divorce, since I am the 100% provider, you could have heard a pin drop. Do not have children. I told Diablo she had 2 kids and my family had 7. I love a big family, and I want a family, and so does Karen. However, after you poisoned her mind, now Karen is reconsidering. I went over other items she coached her daughter with, which were all negative with regards to my conversations with Karen. I concluded and told her that if she and her husband do not want us to get married, then why not just say so? It would hurt, but manipulative sabotage is no way to go. Diablo gave me a very disingenuous apology and claimed that was not their intention. Their intentions were only for the sake of their daughter's happiness. I then shut her up when I pointed out that there are 2 people in a marriage, and happiness goes beyond one person, and how one unhappy party leads to an unhappy and unhealthy marriage, and mostly winds up in an ugly, life-changing divorce. All this time, Karen just sat and listened. Diablo conceded, especially after being busted by the X-rated video. She just did this to give her time to go underground and plot her next move before resurfacing again, a plan that she came up with very soon after our meeting. I learned a long time ago that the devil is working on his next plan when he sees that his current plan is not working very well. Why I didn't just tell all of them to fuck off and leave the relationship? I don't know. I loved Karen too much to give up. I'm a fighter, and fighters don't give up that easy. Smart ones do. But dumb, stubborn young ones like me stay in until their brains turn to mush. A week later, during a conversation between Karen and I on a date away from Mother, she told me that she was taking a week off and flying to Pennsylvania to visit Diablo's family. I didn't think much of it other than I thought it was a good idea and a good break for me, as college final exams were just around the corner, and I could use this time to stay later at the university and study with a group. Diablo's plan could not have come at a worse time. The week went by, and I missed Karen. We had no contact since personal cell phones did not exist at that time. Another red flag I missed since she did not leave me a contact phone number in PA. She was flying home the next day, and I planned a nice evening date for our first date when she returned. My older brother volunteered to drive the 200-mile round trip to Tampa to pick Karen up so that we could have the time to talk and not be distracted by driving. My brother is a great guy, and that's the way my family is. When we picked up Karen and started back home, I sat with her in the back seat. The conversation was not going well at all. She was distant and cold, and not at all engaging in the conversation regarding her time with her family. She looked away several times while I was talking. I was confused and upset, as she seemed to be uninterested in seeing and speaking with me. This was very much not like her. She was usually bubbly and happy to see me after we've been apart for a day, let alone a week without any contact. I started to get that ache in the pit of my stomach that signaled to me that something was seriously wrong. My brother was listening to the conversation. When I spotted him looking at me in his rearview mirror, he rolled his eyes and shook his head. He knew what was going on but kept quiet as he drove. I was very concerned with her coldness and asked her if she was feeling ill. When she realized I noticed her coldness, she turned to me and, with a fake smile, she told me she was just tired. I didn't fall for this bullshit, as I've seen that look before after one of her talks from Diablo. I told her, "You've been tired before," and didn't fail to ever greet me with tight hugs and kisses and smiles. What's the problem? She kept dismissing me, and while looking out the car's window, she stuck to her. I'm just tired. Crap. All the way home, she avoided making eye contact with me. It was a 2-hour drive home that felt like 2 years. During the last hour of the drive, there was silence as she nervously fidgeted with her hands. When we arrived at her home, I took her baggage out of the trunk and followed her in, while my brother patiently waited for me. When I walked into her home behind Karen, I expected Diablo to be all shits and giggles and hugs for Karen. To the contrary, Diablo looked very worried and concerned. She studied Karen and me for a few seconds and then put on a diabolical Cheshire cat smile. My eyes finally opened as the gastrointestinal juices burned the shit out of my stomach. I did my best to put on a poker face, and while they hugged, I made up an excuse about having to get back to my studies. Before leaving, Karen managed the strength to give me a consolation hug and a peck on my lips. Again, totally out of character. There was something serious, all right, but it was not from being tired. Before I walked out, I told Karen to get a lot of rest because we needed to meet tomorrow and have a discussion. Diablo smiled, and speaking for her daughter, she said, "That's fine. Why don't you come here tomorrow night for dinner?" I agreed, and that told me all I needed to know, and confirmed that this was not going to go well. An older, experienced man like my brother saw this coming, but a young, naive, inexperienced guy like me never gave any regard to all the signs and red flags. Driving home, my brother felt sorry for me. At 21 years old, I was a good-looking young man, 6'1", 210 pounds, with a good, tight, muscular body and a lot of energy. My brother told me I looked like I just got my ass kicked by a 120-pound girl. I told him it was a tag team match, and I felt like I was handcuffed while on my knees and being kicked in the gut by a rookie and a brutal professional mule. He said he knew something bad was coming and asked me what I intended to do about it if he was right. I told him I was going to meet with them tomorrow night and talk. His head snapped back at me, and he demanded, "What? Them? Why them? Why not just you and Karen?" I answered, "Because this is something I realized was most likely planned by her mother." Like a scene from The Godfather, my brother leaned over to me and said, "Do you know how they're going to come at you, Michael?" That made me laugh, and I answered, "Yeah, I think so. I know it's not good, but they're not going to shoot me. Not with bullets anyway. It looks like another attempt to divide us. I'm pretty sure her mother concocted something here, and I'm pretty sure that she raised the bar in her scheme. I'm very upset, but I'll handle it." My brother helped by keeping me laughing, which helped simmer the burning in my stomach by jokingly saying, "Don't worry, you can count on me to help you bury the bodies." Thank God for guys like my brother. The following evening, I met with her and her family for dinner. Nothing special was served, but what was served to me afterward was a shit sandwich. I didn't have much of an appetite in anticipation of the after-dinner conversation. Karen was quiet and cold and didn't make much eye contact. But when she did, it was a look of anxiety. Her parents were cold, but her younger sister Debbie kept nodding her head and looking at me with an expression of sorrow and a look that could only be interpreted as a, "Sorry, but I told you so." Dinner was over, and Daddy Wussy and Debbie left the table. When Debbie walked past me, she looked unhappy as she gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze before going to her bedroom. The scene is set. It was the quiet calm before the storm. My eyes went to and fro between Diablo, who looked like she was contemplating and measuring her words before initiating the conversation, and Karen, who was fidgety and nervous. Diablo cleared her throat and started with a fake sympathetic statement. "This came as a surprise to us, and I hope you understand. We have some news for you about Karen's visit to Pennsylvania." I answered, "I gathered that much, and from everyone's looks it appears that there is some bad news for me. Am I right?" Diablo nodded her head, and Karen's eyes welled up with tears. "It wasn't due to the bad news for me. It was because she didn't like confrontation, and she was scared. I never gave her a reason to be scared, and always treated her with love and respect." Diablo continued, "Well, I'll get right to the point. Karen met a young man, and they hit it off so well. I was shocked, but I interrupted her and, nodding my head, I sarcastically said, 'Really? No kidding.' I'm relieved. I thought she was diagnosed with terminal cancer." Shaking my head, I then became very serious, and with controlled anger I asked Karen, "Why would you do such a thing when you're engaged to me?" When Diablo tried to intervene, I put my finger up and stopped her, demanding, "Don't answer for her. She's a big girl, and she can answer for herself." Looking back at Karen, I calmly requested, "Please explain." By this time, my stomach was in knots. I wanted to stand up and tell all of them to F off and go straight to hell, but I held back. But I had to know something. Was it me? What did I do? If it was, I wanted to be sure to correct my relationship sins so that it doesn't happen again with future relationships. Right then and there, keeping it to myself, I concluded. It was over between us. No chance of recovery. But I wanted to know, and I wanted time to sort all this out. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of just getting up and walking away. I wanted my pound of flesh. Karen took a deep breath and swallowed hard before answering. She said, "Well, when he approached me and told me how beautiful and lonely I looked, we started a conversation. He has all the qualities you have. Bullshit. This weasel of a guy just wanted to get into her panties." I cringed but kept it to myself. Where I came up with this much self-control, I don't know, but I sat quietly and listened to all her bullshit. Nervously, she went on, "I know she was coached, and she rehearsed this crap. He is kind and gentle, and we met several times during my visit. My heart was broken, and I couldn't believe my ears as I listened to this moron try to justify her unfaithfulness. I had to close my mouth several times as I sensed my jaw dropping during her lengthy, disgusting attempt to validate her actions." Diablo nodded her head with the purpose of giving Karen support to explain her horrific deceitfulness. She continued, "He has a good job and makes a lot of money." Money? My thought response was, "You materialistic, two-timing liar. And he has a full head of hair too." I was slightly balding, and she told me months ago that she didn't like my thinning hairline. "And he is working very hard to get promoted." I sat there with my elbows on the table and my hands under my chin, not because I was fascinated by her newfound potential partner, but in order to keep my jaw from dropping with every bullshit characteristic flaw in me which she described and compared to this bum. When she finished, I asked, "So you're going to throw away almost 2 years of our relationship in the toilet and go after this guy after a few days together? What about the time I stayed by your hospital bedside and helped you with your recovery? What about all the other times I went out of my way to help you and your family?" Karen looked at me and shook her head. She was at a loss for words, as Diablo didn't do such a good job anticipating my questions when she coached her. Then I asked Karen, "Didn't this guy know you were engaged to be married?" She looked at the floor and then, looking up, she shocked me when she said, "No, I took off my engagement ring. He doesn't know about us." Her action right there not only told me this selfish lady didn't love me, but it also told me she didn't know what love and commitment between two people was all about. To her, it was all about her. She was nothing but a selfish, lying, two-timing, narcissistic, self-centered, spoiled, rotten, soulless little damn witch. How I continued to control myself, I don't know. It was all so surreal that I looked around in disbelief and didn't utter a word because I knew my NYC was going to surface, and there were going to be a lot of FUs, etc. What a fool I realized I was for so long, led by the nose ring like some dumb ox. Right then and there, I was thinking about calling my brother and asking him to help me bury the bodies, but I stopped, and the thought made me snicker under my breath. My brother was so right. I wasn't ready for this next major shock that was about to come. After hearing this crap, I asked if they wanted to end the engagement. Karen and Diablo quickly waved their hands and said, "No. We just want to tell you that this guy is planning a visit here next week to spend a week with us so that we can meet him, and we want you to stay away until Karen makes up her mind and calls you." I could not believe this request. My NYC came out, but only in my mind. I thought to myself, what the F do these two idiots think I am? Are they out of their damn minds? I was furious, but I didn't show it. Thinking carefully, I quickly decided to take some time and get some revenge, so I responded, "Okay, I'll respect your wishes and I'll stay away for whatever time you need to make your decision." Little did they know I wanted to take this time to plot an escape plan that will teach this little lady and her hateful Diablo big mother witch a lesson. I was hurt, but I didn't show it. I stood up and said, "I gotta leave." No hugs or kisses. Karen was quietly sobbing. Diablo insincerely said, "I'm so sorry," to which I responded as I walked away, "I'll bet the farm you're not." I felt humiliated and violated, but I didn't want to make a scene. I had too much going for me and thought it was better to retreat and come up with a plan. These two ladies thought they had a suckerfish still attached to their fishing pole. As a couple of weeks went by, I focused as hard as I could on my studies and final exams. It was over, but I just needed to talk to someone. I met with a university professor I befriended, and we talked about my situation. In his private office, I explained what happened. He listened, and then he told me something that really helped me get through this and ace my finals. He said, "Take it from me. I've been married and went through a horrible divorce. I lost my house and my kids to a no-good cheating woman. She cheated on me, and I had photos to prove it, and the courts still screwed me and rewarded her. You don't know just how lucky you are that you didn't marry this selfish lady. Count your blessings and take this as a lesson learned that could have been much, much, much worse. I'm still paying alimony and child support, but you are getting out of this very cheap. You have a broken heart. I have a broken heart too, but I also have a broken home, and she's financially breaking me. Go home and lick your wounds, and thank God that you are not in my position. I wish I was in your spot. I'd gladly leave and sing and dance all the way home if I were you." I told him, "I'm through with her, and I understand what you're saying, but it hurts, and I just needed to talk to somebody." He answered, "Of course it does. You wouldn't be human if it didn't hurt. Now put yourself in my shoes. I live in a one-bedroom apartment. I pay over $2,000, remember that's $1,979, a month in alimony and child support. I don't get to see my kids because they're in Texas and I'm in Florida, and I'm barely making enough money to support myself, even on macaroni and cheese. Is that what you want? Is her magical body worth so much? Don't be a fool. She's manipulating and using you. Get out while you can get out cheap, and don't look back. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Take your time and find someone who's worth having you, and tell this person thank you for not screwing you in a marriage with kids." I went home and thought about everything he said, and the next day I went to him and thanked him. He smiled and said, "You're doing the right thing, and I'm glad I helped make it easier to move on." I went home that day and called several beautiful girlfriends I used to hang out with and met up with them at the club every day after final exams, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with them. I needed that, and the pain disappeared. Karen called a couple of days after the phenomenal mystery man went back to Pennsylvania. Receiving the call from Karen, we set up a time after this simp left and went back home. She seemed thrilled and acted like the same old Karen I knew, and reacted great to know that we were going to meet up at her house with Diablo. I laughed to myself and knew right away the mystery man turned out to be a dud. But I had my plan. She admitted that things did not go well with the guy, and that she was done with him, to which I said, "Great, let's celebrate tomorrow night." Meeting with her the next evening, I did not enthusiastically respond to her hugs and kiss. All dressed up for a night on the town, she looked at me with a puzzled expression. When I went into her house, Diablo greeted me with a very friendly smile and an excited greeting. "Hello, it's so good to see you." I was salivating as I put on an Oscar-winning performance and reciprocated the faked excitement. We sat and talked, but neither Karen nor Diablo gave me any feedback on this guy's visit. I knew it was a bad one because they offered me food and drinks and made me feel welcomed home like I was the prodigal son. Then Debbie came in and gave me a big hug and a big smile. She then looked at Diablo and Karen, frowned, shook her head, and walked away. I did not disclose my intentions to her or Diablo, so when I said it's time to go, Karen followed me out of the house. Stopping and standing momentarily inside her attached garage, she stated, "It was you I loved all along. You're the only one for me." I shook my head and thought, what bullshit from this narcissistic moron. She doesn't expect what's coming. I then had to know and asked, "What made you change your mind and tell this guy he's not for you?" She answered, "Well, he does drugs. When we went out, he offered me some drugs he was doing along with smoking pot, and since I don't do drugs and you don't do drugs, I told him to take me home and leave. That's when I realized you were the only one for me." I shook my head as I listened to the crap pouring out of her mouth. She then asked, "Where are we going to celebrate?" Standing alone in the garage, I put my plan into action and asked her, "You told me when you met this guy you took off the engagement ring, right?" She nodded yes. Then I asked her to take it off and show it to me. She obliged and, smiling, she took it off and handed it to me. Smiling at her, I pocketed my ring and said, "Good. I just want to tell you to go celebrate with that manipulative woman of a mother you have." She stood there stunned as I continued, "When you met this guy and lost your ring, you lost me too. I'm going out tonight with my other girlfriends, and I'm going to celebrate my newfound freedom. Goodbye and good luck finding anyone like me in your life ever again." I knew her well enough to know that this will devastate this little narcissist possessive witch. She went from believing she had her choice of two guys to getting royally dumped and now having no one. Her jaw dropped as she looked at me with shock and disbelief. I laughed, and as I turned and walked to my car to leave, she melted down big time. She yelled, "Come back! Don't leave me!" Watching me walking away, the realization hit her hard. She then cried and screamed at the top of her lungs. I heard her continuous crying and wailing until I shut my car door and drove away. I guess my hearty laughter helped increase the pain I reciprocated by dumping this good-for-nothing two-timer. As I drove away, I noticed all the lights coming on inside the house. I couldn't help but laugh out loud all the way to the club. I had a great time that night as I sat around the breakfast booth with several friends after leaving the club and rehashing the story with them. Later on, in this small Florida town, I ran into Karen while out shopping. The first time I did, she went out of her way to approach me. Stopping me, she smiled and asked, "Oh, hi. How are you doing?" I looked at her and, smiling, I immediately replied, "You didn't give a shit about me when we were engaged. Why do you care now? To answer your question, I'm doing so well without you." As I laughed and walked away, leaving her with her mouth and eyes wide open, I heard her little sister Debbie, who was with her, laughing at her and saying to Karen, "You deserve that." On another day while I was in a Kmart, remember it's 1979, I crossed paths with Diablo. She stopped and smiled, and with a fake saddened expression, the queen of drama said, "Oh, it's so nice to see you, and I want you to know how much we, and especially Karen, miss you." I laughed out loud and replied loud enough where all the people around us stopped, stared, and listened. "Well, I'm glad you learned a lesson and realized what you lost by being so hateful and dishonest. I also want you to know how much better my life is after I dumped Karen and cut your degenerate cancerous family out of my life." As I smiled, chuckled, shook my head, and walked away. But not before seeing Diablo squinting with her mouth open. She stood there stunned and embarrassed. Fast forward 5 years, I'm married to this incredible, traditional, real woman. Stopping by a pizza place for lunch, we ran into Karen's sister Debbie and her newlywed husband. She invited us to her table, where we sat down together and had lunch. I love Debbie as a friend. I didn't ask about Karen, but Debbie was anxious to update me. I said okay, since I was well over Karen, and didn't really care what happened to her. While she and her husband laughed about the situation, she told me how Karen was now married to a very successful man, and they had a child together. But it gets better, at least for me, but not for Karen's husband. Debbie said Karen's husband is miserable with her as Diablo moved in with them. Debbie said this guy is so disgusted with Diablo and can't get her out. She helps with the baby but hasn't changed her nasty habits. They were at Karen's earlier that day. When they all left the house at the same time, Karen's husband was so pissed with her nagging that before Debbie could shut the car door, she heard Karen's husband say to Karen, "Just get in the car, bitch." For a second, I felt sorry for the husband. Then I shook my head and said, "Debbie, I remember very early on that you tried to warn me about Karen, but I shook it off as jealousy. If only I listened to you." Later on that night, I told my wife how glad I was that Karen did what she did, Otherwise, I would have never met her and have such a good married life. Today, I am a very successful retired man living large with a very successful retired traditional woman by my side. When I proposed to my wife in 1983, I gave her the same engagement ring I gave Karen. She was not only thankful, but she was also very grateful that, as she put it, she was incredibly happy and was going to do everything she could to make me happy. The difference is my wife put her words into actions and proved it for 40 years and still going strong. We are financially successful, debt-free, and live a great life together, and there's still a lot of healthy romantic and physical relations between us and only between us. We don't take our relationship for granted and often thank each other for the journey, especially when we see horrible things wives and husbands, BFs and GFs too, do to each other. We have candlelight dinners together at home almost every night, even if it's just burgers and fries. We go boating, cruising, to concerts, and even go shopping together. The key word is together. The secret to our successful relationship is summed up in one word: unselfishness. Every anniversary, my wife receives expensive jewelry. One day, while in a large department store, we stopped by the jewelry counter. When I showed my wife some very nice jewelry, she said in front of the saleswoman that she had enough jewelry. The saleswoman was stunned, and, not believing what she heard, she asked, "Are you serious?" My wife nodded and replied, "He always buys me jewelry, and I can't wear everything he gives me." The woman stood there in shock. She looked at me, and then, turning her attention to my wife, she said, "Keep him happy." I never heard that before from any woman. Before leaving the area, the saleswoman pulled me aside and said, without my wife hearing, "I never heard a woman say that." "You're a good man," I replied. My wife deserves the best. When we were married in our church, we wore crowns that signified we were king and queen of our home. So what else does a king get for his queen? Jewelry, diamonds, emeralds, rubies, etc. The woman smiled and said, "I wish all men were like you." I replied, "They would be if all women were like my queen." She smiled and asked, "Is she giving you something special?" I was a little offended by her question, but knowing how some women are, I let it slide and then answered, "Yes." She entrusted me with her life and is a great wife. I don't believe this woman understood the magnitude of my answer. That's just one of the many reasons women are so lost today. They don't value their hardworking man. If Karen could have only been like my wife, she would have been treated like a queen when my career soared to all-time heights. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. See you in the next one.